Welcome, Mr. Bouquet.
Thank you.
I know you just went through this the press meeting, but I would like to ask you just to give us a base for this interview, to give us the main things of this new agreement.
Okay. The assumption is, as you know, that the assets in the Landsbanki estate will be sufficient to repay all or most of this liability. That projection has become more robust as the months have gone on as a result of improved collections as well as improvement in exchange rates. The problem is no one can guarantee it. You see, the recoveries could be less, the distributions could be delayed, or the exchange rate could move the other way. In negotiating this agreement, therefore, we had to embed in it arrangements that would automatically adjust in the event that the liability turned out to be larger than anyone now expects it will be. And we did that in a couple of ways. With respect to the principal amount of the loans that the British and the Dutch have made, the current agreement, this agreement, says that they will be repayable commencing in June of 2016. But then there's a sliding scale. If the amount at that point is 45 billion ISK or less, it gets repaid in 1 year. The thought was that is a digestible amount, and one would have 7 years to prepare for it. Yeah. To the extent that it's larger, and that is not what's now expected.
This is a small anecdote.
Yes.
Do you have to pay that in foreign currency, or can it be repaid in Icelandic kroner?
It's in sterling and euros, depending on which country. To the extent that it's larger than that, for every 10 billion ISK in excess of that, 1 year is added to the repayment period, with a maximum repayment period, and let me stress we do not expect it will go this far, a maximum repayment period that would take it to the year 2046, or 37 years after the money was actually expended. No one expects that would happen.
It would be like 400 billion ISK.
It would have to be something like that, and but it will automatically adjust, therefore, and that was thought to be a very important feature. On the interest rate is divided into two time periods. Between October of 2009 and...
Which is when the fund, the TIF, should have paid out.
When they should have paid out. In fact, the British and the Dutch actually bought the claims at the end of the prior year or in January. So there is a 9-month interest holiday in this deal. But between October 2009 and June of 2016, the outstanding balance of the two loans will bear interest at a fixed rate, a different rate depending on which country is involved. For the Netherlands, the fixed rate is 3%. For Great Britain, it is 3.3%. The difference is explained by the fact that the funding costs for those two countries is slightly different, with the United Kingdom having to pay slightly more to fund itself. You see, the principle that we advocated in this negotiation for how to treat the interest was to say, let us identify a bare cost of funds rates for the two countries. No one should make any money on this, we said. It must be a bare cost of funds rate. Those rates are more or less that. In 2016, current projections say there will be no further liability here. But if that's wrong, then the interest rate will be reset in 2016 and will apply to the remaining life of the loan, whatever that might be, according to the formula I've just described. That rate will be set against something called the commercial interest reference rate. It is a rate published by the OECD every month. They use it for their export financing. It is thought to be as low an international lending rate as one could reasonably get. There will be no margin or profit on top of that rate, but it'll be reset for euros and for sterling at that time.
Obviously, people seem to be happy that this deal is much better than the one that was rejected in March in the referendum, and the other one that the Svavar Gestsson, the team, or the negotiation team headed by Svavar Gestsson, brought back in June 2009. Now, why are you sure that this is surely the best one that we can get when it's got better and better each time?
Well, if you reduce the interest rate, first, I don't think it would get better on the repayment period. This is a completely flexible repayment period that will take it until 2046 if it's necessary. On the interest rate, to the extent one moves below these interest rates, that in effect is a subsidy of their taxpayers to your taxpayers. So you remember that we live in a very different world than we did 2 years ago. Great Britain has a very savage austerity program going. The idea that the politicians in those countries would take back to their taxpayer the notion that they should be subsidizing Icelandic taxpayers, I think it is fatuous to believe that they would or could do so. The objective was to make sure that this is a bare cost of funds rate so that there's no subsidy either way.
Was your mandate just to negotiate the interest rates and the terms of repayment, but not to try and limit the liability?
It was the former. It was to renegotiate, or not renegotiate, to negotiate the repayment terms for that liability, yes.
But as you know, as I said before, there was an agreement that was rejected in a referendum in March that the president rejected. And people weren't just rejecting the interest rates or the terms of repayment, but the affair as a whole, saying, well, we're actually not sure that this is our responsibility. And, I mean, you had on your negotiation team a person like Laurits Blöndal that doesn't think there is a legal basis for the claim. Are they wrong? Was this totally swept off the table? There was no possibility that the legal accounts, that you will take the legal things into account?
The legal things...
Or the doubts that
The doubts were relevant to the extent that there was an open question as to whether there was a legal obligation on the part of the Icelandic state to stand behind the deposit insurance arrangement here. Views on that matter, as you know, are split very sharply. The point was, however, to try to litigate that would have pushed off a resolution of this for a very long time with a very uncertain outcome. Our feeling as a negotiation team was that if one could come to a satisfactory resolution of this in a negotiated way, that was the best outcome for Iceland. To the extent that there were concerns about it, of course they had tactical utility to us in persuading the British and the Dutch to moderate their demands.
But then maybe the question is also, because when the other agreements were rejected, we were told that something horrible would happen that didn't happen. How would it be worse to take the case to court and just get to know whether this legal basis is there or not?
If one took it to court, and if the judgment went against you, then the entire amount would be repayable immediately at that point with no question of any escape or evasion. In effect, my view was, take it to court, and if it did go against Iceland, we would be back at a negotiating table at that point.
That was your view?
Yeah. I mean, it's just the practicalities of it. I don't think you have that much money to write the check for that immediately, but it would have significantly eroded your negotiating position at that point, and could you have gotten terms as favorable as these? I don't know. I don't think anyone does know. My view was that the legal niceties of this, while relevant to it, should not be determinative of the outcome. Remember, the hard fact of this is there was a financial loss. There were only 3 groups that could bear it: the depositors, the British and the Dutch who paid out the depositors, or Iceland. Well, right or wrong, the depositors were paid out in full and quickly. That left only 2 people standing. And the hard fact of it is there was a financial loss that had to be allocated among those remaining parties to it, and that was the mission, to find a way to allocate it in as fair a manner as possible.
But is it, you say it had to be delegated, what the people that disagree with that, they say, well, you know what, we can't be responsible for interest shoppers in the UK or in Holland. It can't be of our responsibility. did the Dutch and the British agree with you in that it was a shared responsibility?
I think the terms that they've agreed indicate that this is not a normal government-to-government type loan. Compare it to the terms that the EU is lending to the likes of Ireland or Greece. It is far, far less than that. So I think eventually they agreed that this was not a conventional loan. This was a truly distressed situation. There was probably enough blame to go around in this one.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of blame. And Icelanders still, I think I can say, feel a bit hurt and would like to hear a little apology after the UK declared, they declared us bankrupt, and then the anti-terrorist laws and how they worked against us at the IMF at a very vulnerable moment in the nation's history. Was that something that you could use, or was it solid steel that you met at the negotiating table?
It wasn't solid steel. I mean, those are the atmospherics of a negotiation like this. But what happened, how the various countries behaved, feelings were running very high in all three countries about the matter. There may have been things done that people in retrospect regret, but in a negotiation like this, the mission is to see whether mutually acceptable terms can be arrived at.
Just to clear out the numbers, because you say that it's about maybe 50 billion that could stand out of the principle, but you're actually saying that you're hoping if the return and the return rate of the Landsbanki will be, or the recovery of the Landsbanki will be, as it seems, that nothing will be left in 2016.
That is the current projection. Remember, the government does not control that. There is a resolution in the Winding Up Committee.
Exactly.
So it is their job to recover the assets, their job to make decisions about distribution.
Is there any estimation from a third party, or is it just from the Winding Up Committee?
I'm not aware of a third party, no, because I don't think anyone else has all of the information necessary to make that.
So we're putting a lot of trusts into the Winding Up Committee?
By necessity, yes.
Yeah. Now, this agreement will be presented in the Parliament in Alþingi and then put to a vote, and then it has to go to the President, which said on Bloomberg on November 26th, if the people of Iceland are being asked to pay for the failure of a private bank, they should also have a say in the final outcome, which someone interpreted as some kind of a threat that he would go again to a plebiscite. What would you think of that?
Well, I'm not a politician in anyone's country, fortunately, and obviously your parliamentary and political processes will play out. Outsider looking at it would say there's a reason that you have a parliament, and that is to speak for the people. That proposition that failed banks, that government funds used to cover failed banks must go to the people is not one that one would expect to be replicated elsewhere in the world. We'd be having referenda in the United States every couple of hours if we did that. There's a reason that you have a parliament, and the parliament's elected by the people and speaks for them, no doubt, in a wide variety of matters. I accept that the president viewed the situation earlier this year as an extraordinary one. I'm told it's only the first or second time that such a thing has been done. And he made the decision he did, and things have moved along. I don't think that having made it once, that he now, I'm not going to give him advice, but I wouldn't have thought he need feel that from now on every decision of this kind needs to go to a referendum. But
then the classical question remains looming. What happens if this agreement is rejected? Where do we stand then?
If it's rejected, then the issue remains back on the table, for good or ill.
Do we go to court, or?
That is one possibility. That is one possibility. As a matter of fact, that's the likely outcome, I think.
But there's no way to know, actually, if we would go to a fourth round, or then they would just say, no further, we will take this to court. That wasn't discussed at the negotiation.
No. There is an old Icelandic expression, it takes three to tango. And I think were that to happen, all three governments would have to decide what is the appropriate course of action for them to take. I don't think we should speculate as to how it might shake out.
Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Bucket.
Thank you.